In this video, we're going to be talking about your first assessment piece for this term. We are doing a speaking and listening task, which just basically means a task where we're assessing you on how well you write and speak out a speech that you've made. So this task, we're actually going to be writing a poem, or what we call a spoken word. So hopefully you've already watched this video here. So poem about Compassion Australia. I made that earlier today. If you haven't watched that, please watch that now before you've watched this video watching right now. I'll let you read the instructions yourself and I'll explain it in my own words. So your task is to choose an aid agency, maybe a one that you've looked at already this last couple of weeks in inquiry, but potentially you could pick one that we haven't looked at yet. So it says here not limited to, which just means here's some examples, but if you think of one that's outside of this, great, go for it. So ones that are quite popular, Oxfam, TIA, UNICEF, they often work with refugees, World Vision. But if there's something that you really were passionate about, like I really love Compassion Australia, it's not on this list. I decided to do mine on them because I think they're a great aid agency and I think they're the best, which is why I chose them. So your task is to choose an aid agency that helps children. You're then going to write a poem about them, and your job is to try and persuade your classmates, the people who listen to your poem, you're trying to persuade them to agree with you that your aid agency is the best aid agency that they should support. So not only are you trying to convince them of that, but you're also wanting to have a call to action, which just means once you've convinced your listener of what you're wanting to convince them of, they need to then be able to do something about it. So you'll remember in my speech that you've just watched on the other video that I used all these different skills to try and convince you, and at the very end I explained now what you can do about it is pay every month $48, which will help a child in need. That's what their child sponsorship program's like. So that's a call to action where the person's going to have to do something about it. So here is a rubric. Rubrics are things that teachers use and students can also use to see how the teachers are assessing the activity. So once you've written your speech and then you've filmed yourself doing the speech, maybe mum or dad will help you film it, or maybe you'll be like me and you'll try and do it in a selfie camera and try your best. Once you've done that and you've uploaded it, the teachers will be able to use this rubric to mark your score, what you're going to get. And then the video, as well as this rubric right here, they'll be filled out. So we might color it in. You get this, and then that will be sent to your parents for them to see. And we'll write a comment down here about how you went and what's something you can work on. So the best to read a rubric is you look in the criteria on this column right here, and you read what is the expectation of the task. So it's expected that you make eye contact with the audience at some point, right? So then I look across and I can see, well, achieving, which just means I'm able to perform my activity to the ability or skill level of another person roughly in my age group. So this shows what you need to do to be seen as a grade 5/grade 6 student. So more than half of your spoken words and more than half of your performance, you're looking at the audience. Obviously we don't have an audience, it's a camera instead. So you're looking at the camera and not at my notes. You'll notice in my version, I didn't look at my notes at all. I had I wrote, you'll get to see my speech in a second. as in my written speech, but you would have noticed I didn't read it at all. I had to memorize it, so I had to practice over and over and over again. And that's one of the reasons why we've given you a whole week to complete your task, because we're expecting that you are doing this to your highest ability. You're not just going to quickly rush this activity and submit whatever you've done. You're going to take your time. So I wrote it a few days ago and practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, and today I finally presented it. So your minimum, you're always going to want to aim for the achieving section. I don't want you ever to just go, oh yeah, I'll just aim for this and I'm just going to bother do this. No, if you aim for this and then you get this score, well then that's okay, because at least you aimed for this and it was your best effort. Yeah, because sometimes you're trying to look at the audience the whole time, but in the end you're really nervous and you just didn't do it, so this is what you get, and that's fine. But as long as this is what you're aiming for, and that's what you're rehearsing and practicing, that's what you're trying your best for. That's all we ask for, that you try your best. So you look at the next criteria and you read across and see, what do I have to do? If you want to be a student that comes out at advanced or a year or more ahead, well then this is the year or more ahead category. So to get some of these, it's really challenging, and the majority of you probably won't get to fill out some of these sections, and that's okay. So as I said, we're aiming for this, but if you get some in here or some in here or some in here, that's a-okay, as long as you give it a good red hot go. So this section here is all about your speaking skills and presenting, and then we have this section here, which is all about your written piece, so what you read. So was it using literary techniques, which this is another fancy name for figurative language. So were you using similes, were you using hyperbole, things like that. So here, to get mastering level, it says you need to use for and use clauses like commas and therefores, those kinds of language in your piece. So you see more of your mark comes from the presenting side, then a good section of it comes from what you've actually written. You want your speech to be about a minute or more longer. So minutes the minimum. I would definitely not go anywhere near 5 minutes. That'd be way too long. Your poem doesn't necessarily have to be rhyming. I know you would have seen my video and noticed I did a lot of rhyming, but you don't have to. It could be more of like a haiku, where you're going to focus more on the syllables that you're using, or maybe you're doing a free verse where it's more like a spoken word, or it's just a motive, and you're imagining you're at a jazz bar and it doesn't have to rhyme, but you're speaking your heart out, and that way it's poetic. If you are going to do an acrostic, then you'd want to make sure, so if I was going to do one on compassion, so pretend I've written compassion here. For C, I don't want to just write, children, next word. That is not what we're expecting. We're expecting at least a page worth of writing. So if you are going to write an acrostic, it would need to be like children who are starving, and then keep writing, and write even a couple sentences, and then go to O, and then go open the door to, and keep writing, right? So if it's an acrostic, make sure you're showing that it is a page worth of writing, and it's going to be about a minute for you to present it. So what I did personally was I used sort of a mixture of some of these skills, right? Mine was very emotive, and I rhymed. I focused on some of the syllables, so that I guess it's a little bit more like a limerick. And yeah, so let's have a look. So this is the speech I used that I wrote up a couple of days ago. And let's look at some of the literary techniques or figurative language that I used. So I decided to rhyme, and how I did that was every second line ended with a word I wanted to rhyme with. Nations and NGO didn't. I just wanted my second line and then my fourth line I always wanted to be rhyming, right? So here's my second, here's my fourth. Here's my second, here's my fourth when it goes down. Some of the rhymes are good, some of them weren't so good. Chow, yeah, maybe you don't know what chow is. Chow is just another name for food. I had desert and unhurt. It wasn't the best rhyme ever. I understand that, but that was the best I could do in the time I had. You might want to try, if you are wanting to rhyme, go on rhymezone.com, and it looks like this. And if you wanted to write with desert, that's what I tried before. Desert. I can click search, and first of all, you want to know how many syllables it has. So desert has 2. So I probably want to be looking at the 2 syllable section, and seeing if there's any words that would fit my poem. If I wanted to write alert, well, better example, hair shirt, I probably am not going to be able, that's not going to add to my poem. If your poem doesn't make sense, then really there's no point in you rhyming. Yeah, so I prefer that your poem it makes sense and is really great compared to just it rhymes well. So you got to really try and juggle that idea of it rhyming or following whatever your poem rule is, but as well as being persuasive and making sense. So I used a bunch of different figurative language. In the rubric, it said, about 4. I used way more than 4, as you can see here. So as an example, alliteration is when you have the first sound of each word starting with the same sound. So I had so the alliteration of the s sound. So sickness, sadness, sitting on stone. In this line, I had h. They're also an example of rule of threes. So rule of threes is when there's 3. So they've got 3 words here separated by commas. So give them a roof, bed, and chow. So I'm describing it in 3 ways. So I also used emotive language. So I said innocent children. So that's really trying to tug at the heartstrings. Metaphors. So we have hearts of gold. Metaphors are when you're saying something is something. So your heart is gold. An example of, can I see any other ones? No, I can see similes. So similes is like, I have as, so it's barren as desert, and like a hero. That's another simile. Taking all the unhurt, I don't think that's anything. We had the country's heartbeat. So that's an example of what we call a personification, where I'm acting like the country is a person. The country has a heart. We know it doesn't actually have a heart. It doesn't have, something that pumps blood around its body, because it's not a body, it's a country. But I acted like it was a human, which is what personification is. Rhetorical question, so a question that I didn't really want people to answer, I just want them to think about it. I again use mighty arm. It's another example of personification. And another rhetorical, so I had another question in there. And then I had some facts. I went on their website, on Compassion's website, and I learned that they've been going for 60 years, so that's why I wrote 6 decades, and 2 million children is another fact that I found. And then I plead with you, some emotive language, and then a call to action, so give $48 a month. That was to do my final line. You always want your call to action bit at the end, once you've finished persuading people. So hopefully that makes sense. Don't forget to take your time, really work on thinking about how your speech is going to be written, how you're going to practice how you're going to say it. Here it says body movement, so you're going to practice how much hand gesture you use. You don't want too much, you don't want too little. Maybe you want to be practicing speaking loudly, or practice in front of a mirror to practice your facial expressions, the way you use your tone, so you don't sound like a robot, or you don't sound too boring like I probably have sounded a little bit in this video. So you've got about a week to do it. Make sure you submit it in this Schoology post today. So this one that we're posting on the Thursday. Even if you finish it next week, come back and post it here. It would be good if you post your video that you record as well as your typed up speech. So if you can post them both, that'd be wonderful. If you don't know how to do that, then maybe email your teacher your speech and upload your video. All the best with your project.